welcome back to the class, everyone. Any of you who have ever watched one of my Omicron ranking videos know that, unfortunately for Aphra, Tusken Raider, and others, they're always marked down a tier because their Omicron is only active half the time. Well, fortunately for us, CG is making a change. That is right, everyone. As you can see right before me, we have a recent forum post stating that they're going to not only be reducing the Omicron price for 5v5 and 3v3 exclusive Omicrons from 20 to 10, but they're also going to be refunding some of those Omicron mats for those of us, including myself, who have already applied them to these characters. So this has a few implications with it, because now not only are we getting Omicrons back, but it really makes the characters who have these Omicrons on a little bit more valuable because there's less sunk costs going into them. I like this actually for a few reasons. Number one, it just kind of seems fair. If your Omicron is only being used half the time, then it should half the cost. The other reason that I like it is because some Omicrons by nature are only really good in 3v3 or 5v5 GAC. For example, if the Zam Omicron all of a sudden were to become a 5v5 only Omicron and CG was going to refund me 10, I would be ecstatic because it's been quite a while since that one has had any use for me in 3v3. But that being said, we need to re-rank and just kind of update everyone as to where these Omicrons now stand. Fortunately for everyone, there really aren't that many to begin with. We'll be talking about Aphra, Tusken Raider, Tusken Chieftain, as well as 000 BT1. I will not be spending really any time on Krex and Zalbar. While they do have 3v3 and 5v5 clauses in their Omicrons, they also have things that are pretty good that apply to both separate game modes. And again, they don't really fit the description of being half off because, well, they're not at all. But as far as the overall exclusive Omicrons for 3v3 and 5v5 go, the two that take the cake that I would advise for pretty much everyone who has these characters up and going and is really interested in GAC has to be Aphra's Leadership as well as Tusken Raider's Unique. These two just add some really tangible value that you'll be able to see in your matches. Aphra is going to be leading the charge in the 5v5 area, and the Omicron just gives her pretty much every single thing she wants. It gives some critical avoidance to all the characters, which is really nice because their survivability isn't great, because the team still doesn't really have a tank. It does also add potency to her, which is nice, especially in the very beginning to start with, because a lot of the things in battle scale with her potency, not just her applying debuffs. A lot of these stats from the droid that she summons actually come directly from it, so it'll make him starter from the very beginning. And then whenever a dark side droid or scoundrel ally inflicts a debuff on an enemy, they gain 10% turn meter. This is really helpful for BT1 actually. You can open up with the burning, and as long as you land enough debuffs, you can actually just take back-to-back turns, which is really nice for especially up against Jabba. And if you guys don't take my word for it, I actually do want to share some win rates with you all that just kind of prove that point. For those of you who do not know, Aphra's really highest tier counter that she can take out is Jabba the Hutt. And even if you add the Leadership Omicron, it's not overall perfect. There's a comp and strategy and modding that are also all involved. But if you have the Leadership applied, overall, Aphra has a 72% win rate against Jabba, which is, in my opinion, a pretty good win rate. Typically, if a character can make it all the way at 80%, I would usually ride out the extra 20 as user error and not really so much a lot of RNG. So again, you will see a little bit of fluctuation depending on the overall comp. B2 does help the counter out a lot, but when wanting to compare apples to apples, we want to compare wide open, just like we have here, to when the Leadership Omicron is not applied. It drops to 37%, which is a really big deal because that's just about double, almost double exactly, actually. So the counter is increased by 100% chance of you winning if you have the Leadership Omicron. And for what it's worth, it actually just increases overall what Aphra is doing on offense. She has an 84 win rate in general, actually excluding Jabba. I didn't want to overlap that. But again, against teams that aren't Jabba, without the Omicron, the win rates do overall fall to 70%, which is still decent, but it's still going up overall 14% between the two. So the Omicron is having some tangible effect, even if you aren't just hunting out that one specific counter. Now, that does give Aphra a place at the very top because Jabba is a top tier team being a Galactic Legend, and actually a Galactic Legend that is commonly placed on defense. Now, Tusken Raider is going to be on essentially the same level for what he is going to be doing in 3v3 defensively speaking. And now I do want to say one of the conflicts here, and I guess we'll do both of these at the same time, is in my opinion, at least for the end game, you don't really have two Tusken teams in 3v3. That is really what CG was trying for. They wanted Tusken Chieftain, Warrior, and Dad Bod Boba to be one team, and then the remaining Tuskens to be on the opposite team. The issue is when you split it up like that, is you allowed two really budget counters to both work. Wampa will actually be able to take out Tusken Raider when he is under, I believe, and Shaman, and then on the other team, you'll also find cheaper counters, not quite as cheap as Wampa, but still Adrad and Qui-Gon Jinn able to beat him out one as Dad Bod Boba is in the place. We can look at the win rates for that as well, as I do have them pulled up. This is overall the Chieftain Omicron involving Dad Bod Boba, and you'll actually notice if we look at the win rates here for the Chieftain Omicron and the Tusken Raider Omicron, they actually don't really change at all. It's about 60% across the board. The difference is what is actually going and countering them. When we look at Dad Bod Boba, he opens up Adrad pretty clearly, as well as Qui-Gon Jinn and Gidme. Gidme just makes a ton of sense in the fact that it works because there isn't a tank to stop her from just deleting someone right off the bat with a lot of protection up, or rather courage generated from the protection up. Now, I will say that our good friend Tusken Chieftain, along with Dad Bod Boba, does have one thing going for him, and it is the fact that it makes the gas counter a lot harder. Now, I personally would say in 3v3, gas is a more expensive team than Qui-Gon Jinn, Gidme, or even Adrad. But at the same time, if that's what your opponent always uses, and you for whatever reason want both and to put it on defense to trip them up, there is some situational value there. Now, again, when we go over to the Raider Omicron that I am dubbing fantastic, it is beat pretty handily by gas. But if we look at some of the other counters, it just keeps being really expensive. You'll see Lord Vader here is a very common counter, soloing him as a Galactic Legend. Traya Savage, very expensive counter. Obviously, you can see Adrad here doesn't work quite well. Jedi Knight Revan, if he has Cal in the group there, actually Aphra doesn't do pretty well at all. Traya without Savage is also doing poorly. Bounty Hunters don't really have a shot. Galactic Legend, Wampa doesn't have a shot. Galactic Legend, Malicos. So you can kind of get the overall general idea that both the Tusken teams are good, assuming Chieftain and Warrior on the team, but Tusken Raider is cutting out more budget counters than the situational Chieftain. And also, in regards to Chieftain, if you worked up Tuskens for 5v5, you're going to have to get Dad Bod Boba for 3v3 if you want to invest in his. That really just makes Boba Fett, Scion of Jango a Tusken ally on the team. So that is overall the fantastic ones. These are the two that I would recommend to pretty much, again, everyone who's in GAC and who wants to go after it and has them. Tusken Chieftain's pretty situational. For luxury, we're going to be listing Aphra's unique as well as her special. If you have to choose between the two, which I guess you probably don't, I would prefer the unique just because of some of the things that it's doing in regards to the characters being immune to ability block and healing immunity. There have been some times where my BT1 will get ability blocked, and it is actually really annoying, but at the same time, I'm not sure if we would have won those counters anyways. The special I actually really don't like at all, because all it does is add bonus damage to Aphra's potency and inflict buff immunity and healing immunity, which you don't need more damage from Aphra. That's what BT1's for, or whatever other attacker you have on there. And the buff immunity and healing immunity just typically aren't needed, because again, BT1 should just be burning everything to the ground with his AoEs, or just getting through the main target with his basic ability that does a lot of damage. Now, if we look at the overall win rates as to what those do, I did have those pulled up as well, and it really doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Overall, if you were to add in both of them at the same time, I believe things changed by about 4%. I don't have them pulled up, but it overall wasn't making that big of a difference. But at the same time, they can, in some niche scenarios, help you out. Now, in dead last place, we've got 000 and BT1. And if you've seen me do Omicron videos before, you've seen me rag on these guys. And again, they're fantastic characters. There's nothing wrong with them as characters. But the Omicrons are still garbage. It says whenever BT1 or 000 defeat an enemy, their cooldowns are refreshed and they gain 30% turn meter. If he defeats someone, he gets a bonus turn. So who cares about 30% turn meter? And it doesn't matter if his cooldowns are reduced, because he gets the granted ability Haywire that only he can use in that turn. So it's just, again, the Omicron costs less now, but you're getting the ability that functionally really isn't doing anything. And I guess you could argue the fact that this is also applying to 000, but I mean, 000 isn't killing anyone. And if he is like 30% turn meter, that's not changing a single matchup out there. I actually like 000's a little bit more, just because Torture for 2 turns actually does seem really nice, and it has some recover in there. And again, it also wants to be able to defeat enemies. But again, in 3v3, if you start knocking out enemies, you don't really need extra perks. If you just have 33% of their team immediately taken out, then again, it just doesn't really matter. Now, as overall stats go, because I guess we've just been showing those a lot, it's actually really sad how little 000 and BT1's Omicrons do. This 80% win rate here at the top that you're seeing right now, in general against teams, this is without either the Omicrons applied. If we go over to the next screen, this is with them applied. And I'm not getting them confused. I guess I can come over here and show you that this is again with them applied, and it's lower. So I don't think the Omicrons necessarily make the team worse, but it's really hard to argue that they're actually making them better when the win rates overall go down. Now, there's other factors at play, and one of the biggest issues from a data standpoint is the sample sizes we're taking are vastly different, and we have 19,000 versus 350,000. But again, I can't find anything in here that realistically would argue that they are at all a good idea. So I guess if you're swimming on Omis and you feel like applying them and you like the characters, have fun. But from an overall efficiency standpoint, just don't do that. Just save yourself. But at any rate, Doctor Aphra's leadership, fantastic. Tusken Raiders, unique is also really good. And then some of the others can be situational. But thank you guys for watching. Until the next time, stay awesome.